So in these challenging times, cybersecurity, the loss of critical data, and the ultimate consequences because of a cyber event are a key risk to financial services institutions globally. Finding a solution that can easily and in real time secure data is absolutely imperative. My name is Nav Singh. I'm the Head of Marketing and Communications for Banking Capital Markets here at DXE Technology. Joining me today is Dave Spence, who's the Head of Security for EMEA region at DXE Technology. The security landscape for the financial services ecosystem has seen significant changes over the past 2 years, especially over the pandemic era. Organizations have made significant investments in all elements of the ecosystem, whether that be for the branch, for the colleague, or for the customer. So how can we really secure the financial services ecosystem, and how can we prevent that critical loss of data?
That's a great question, Nav. It's been really interesting over the last couple of years through the pandemic how greater use of digitization, remote working, adoption of cloud, it's exploded in all sectors. And particularly in the financial services sector, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of benefit for enabling digital access to financial services for all of us. But it comes with a number of threats and risks. And one of the key ones is, these organizations are no longer in full control of their data. So, a couple of decades ago, it was all on premise and they could build the walls as high as they wanted and really control who physically accessed all of this information. That's really no longer the case. This data is more shared with third parties. It's in different cloud environments. It's in a mix of locations. Kind of really understanding that is a key part of what they need to do to be really understanding and securing and being more resilient as a sector. So this extension of trust and reliance on critical third parties for their overall security is also really quite different. And it's kind of they're reliant on each other, and as an overall market, kind of an interconnected symbiotic ecosystem of partners, financial service providers that really keep the markets running. And the regulators recognize this, and they're moving for greater oversight of not just the financial companies themselves, but also their service providers, and what that means in terms of protecting overall market stability. And the overall aim is market resilience from their perspective. But what do the organizations really need to do? They really need to know their critical business functions and their core sets of data. They really need to understand where they are, how they move, which third parties touch them, how they rely on those third parties to keep the services running and to secure the data and to be resilient. And part of that is working with the ecosystem of partners and other organizations in the sector to really test the resilience, test the security, understand where they're good, where they might be weak, and learn to adapt and bring in new things and plan future enhancements to keep their overall data and their market functions secure.
So thank you, Dave. Any lessons we can learn from any examples that you may have?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the lessons to learn from some of the examples that we've seen over the last 2 decades, unfortunately, they're really familiar to those that have been working in the industry and in security for quite some time. There are some common repeated failings, and it's proven that getting the basics right consistently at scale is not as easy as you might imagine. So when we look at some of the systems that support the banking and capital markets and financial services sector, the actual security of the internet-facing applications and systems is something that you'd think would be right top of mind for what they're doing, and they'd test it and they'd understand it and make it as secure as they can. Unfortunately, there's no infallible security that you can put in places of these. And so just simple exposures of data. There's the first American data exposure, where it was more of a lack of authentication or basic misconfigurations in the application that really exposed significant amounts of data. And then there's the more kind of application type security attacks, like something like SQL injection. So it's a method of kind of putting data in to get more data queries back from the database. There was the Heartland payment system data compromise, from, it was a while ago now, but it's a significant one because there was a significant flaw in the actual security of the application that really led to a significant compromise of large volumes of sensitive personal and financial data. So the actual security of the applications is really key as well. But kind of underpinning that as well, the applications run on the infrastructure and systems, and really keeping those up to date with good configuration, with the latest patches, is something which is really important, particularly where they're connected to the internet. If we go back to Equifax and the breach, the data breach that they had, that was really, really fundamentally down to a lack of appropriate and quick patching of some quite serious vulnerabilities. And then also looking at what happened with Equifax, one of the reasons that it was so impactful was that they had very, very sort of perimeter focus to security, which I mentioned earlier in terms of building the external walls high and a little bit of a soft interior, but kind of segmenting and having security in depth is a key part as well. And just some general poor practices as well that we see crop up time and time again. And some of the hybrid challenges of multi-cloud and moving to cloud and not quite having the same controls as you do, or understanding the same controls between on-prem environments and cloud. A really good example of that was the Capital One, which is a sort of AWS environment, some previous former engineer, kind of slow moving, joiners, movers, leavers, giving access for longer than was really required. So really being tight and understanding on some of the really basic practices and some of the cloud adoption and the hybrid environments, and taking what works internally, which a lot of banks are really good at understanding. They've got a really long history of understanding how to do on-prem well, and translating what works from that into the cloud and in their journey to hybrid cloud environments.
So great, Dave. How can DXC help?
So how can DXC help? Well, what we're really good at, as I mentioned, is getting things right at scale. In financial services and banking and capital markets, I mentioned having the right third-party partners and the right ecosystem of partners to really help them secure the data, understand where their businesses are, their critical systems, and really work to make that as secure and resilient as possible. And that's something that as DXC that is in our blood, that we understand. As an organization, we've been working to help secure and make resilient some of the most fundamental systems and critical national infrastructure, underpinning the governments, as well as keeping factories running, as well as financial service markets running. And that understanding and what we know and how we work at scale across on-prem and also across hybrid cloud and cloud native environments, that understanding makes us uniquely placed to really help the financial services organizations and banking capital markets really understand their data, secure their data, and be a lot more resilient to the kind of threats and risks that we see across the broad span of clients that we work with globally and in Europe, across the different sectors, and particularly targeting financial services.
So Dave, thank you very much indeed for joining us today and providing these unique insights into how financial services companies can really protect themselves during a cyber event.
Thank you for having me. It's been really nice.
And thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed these insights provided by Dave Spence here at DXC Technology. Please do join us for more insights provided by other subject matter experts within the banking and capital markets vertical here at DXC Technology. We're here to help you.